Well, we have a copy of the, are these all, oh, it's a long article, that's why.
Yeah, it's a really long one.
Okay.
There's 3 copies there.
Okay. So I have copies of Article 25, the reduction in workforce and recall, and maybe we'll just leave them right here and then sign during, when we go to caucus.
Sounds fair.
Okay. So I propose that we just go down the articles chronologically. I know that you're passing back several, as are we, so, but I thought if we wanted to kind of go through each of them and just kind of refamiliarize ourselves with where we're in disagreement or understanding our positions and whatnot. So does that seem agreeable?
Well, I thought that we'd start with the 3 that we're going to do because they're going to probably be a lot less discussion.
Okay.
They're pretty, a couple kind of close, and the other one I think is well understood. We could still do that, but we just thought that for the sake of time that might be faster, and then we could go to your proposal, which would probably merit more discussion, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, like, for instance, recognitions, go through and try to understand that position.
Sure, and we can do that too. I guess the only substitute to that would be that we'd like to start with these 3 just because I think they will be quicker.
Okay.
And just, then we get into those longer discussions, you already have these, if that's okay with you guys.
Fine by me.
All right. Actually, I know you really wanted to, so.
I did.
Okay, keep going.
No paper clips.
Stole his.
Thank you.
I think we're one short, Obi.
Too
That's all right.
short.
I'll be sure. We'll just make sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm actually borrowing yours, so too short. Yeah, backward up. All right, so Article 15 reclass, I think what you see above there is mostly green. I think we're in alignment on that. We still want to strike the God clause, the superintendent denial. We've agreed with changing, I guess I should put that in green on 5, moving that to the salary article.
And you will see a proposal on that today.
Yeah, so just, that's why I'm kind of with these. I think some of these are really close.
Okay.
Emergency closure, we tried to use your template and add in the things that we're concerned about. And obviously, we don't want the second week to have to bargain. We want to make the unlimited, like basically all of your neighbors, at least the ones I deal with, have. Down below, you'll see we accepted the changes in green there for C and I and CI. The 2I we added in because we wanted to make sure, we really feel this is an equity issue because we understand that the teachers, if we're making up hours and they're not because they have the ability to switch to a contact day, it just feels unequal there. And so we put this language back in there and we did add another option with additional pay if needed, so keep them in parity from our point of view anyway. And down below under 1, I know we've been doing this, that people have been coming in, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Dan, from your vantage point, but if I'm Vance, I have to come and scrape the sidewalks for you for 4 hours. I'm getting my regular pay for that plus closure day pay. Is that correct? Is that how you understand that?
No, I'm looking at Kim. We're both, so on the first closure day, they get regular pay plus closure day.
Right.
Closure pay.
Right. So we kind of changed this around here to time and a half, and I got to looking at this, and it kind of didn't make sense for what we had. I'm not sure that was the intent either, but it would actually reduce that from essentially double time for the hours they worked to time and a half for the hours they were used. I don't think that was the intent, or maybe it was. I don't know. But anyway, in this proposal, we've tried to make it a little clearer that they would get the closure day, the first day. We put time and a half because we're not sure if that's what you want or not, but it might be since you struck regular straight pay. So that's why you see those changes there. And then down below, just to make it really clear, because I know anybody who comes in on site when other people are working remote, I didn't feel it was spelled out clearly in this, because if I'm being told to work remote from home, but now I'm having to risk the elements to come in, that's why I put that last sentence in there, so to make that really clear that that's what we're talking about when the time and a half applies. So my hope is that that's clear. I think you kind of been doing some of this, but I don't, sounds like we have a little question on some of this stuff, so maybe
Well, I
this is a
think
good point.
where we were trying to take it from previous bargainings was to have 12-month employees, essentially all 12-month employees become the designated employee. Because what we were, at least the conversations I remember having before when we had the designated talk in the contract, the conflicts, for lack of a better word, that we were bumping into was the fact that some 12-month employees were getting called in and some 12-month employees were not getting called in, but the 12-month employees, so the 12-month employees not getting called in were still getting paid. So that's what we were, the issue we were trying to solve in previous bargaining. And so I don't know if, feels like we're going back and we're gonna bump into that conflict again about why are some not getting called in, and what we're trying to provide clarity around is all 12-month employees are going to work after the first closure day.
Okay. I mean,
I think we're still
We'll have to
talking
talk
kind of
about
the
that,
same group of people, and I keep kind
yeah.
of,
Well,
because,
right.
we've got tech employees that oftentimes will work from home, which we were trying to specify they're not going to get time and a half for
Right.
that type of work. But those folks that we are calling in for the on-site, kind of the risk element that you're referring to, we are trying to put a benefit there or trying to compensate for that. So I just worry that the designation part's gonna confuse it again, because then there's this sense that the supervisor has to call and designate. And we're trying to say all 12-month will work after the first day. And if you get called into a site to work, you're gonna get paid more.
Okay.
That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, that's helpful. I played with that sentence for a while because I was trying to figure that out for myself too, because we talked about it. I mean, that's very helpful what you're saying. That clears that up. So I think we could, well, I guess it's your turn, so we'll entertain a counter that clarifies that. But I mean, I think we have the same goal. Anybody is working, with the exception of people who are working from home, I think we're on the same page. It's just,
Yes.
I guess we just didn't quite capture it the way that
Yeah.
we hoped, so.
I just worry about the designation part, because
I
then that
agree.
feels like the district is the one that has to go, you're it, and then versus trying to keep it really broad. I'm a 12-month employee, I have to work. So
Right.
where is up to the supervisor, and then
Right.
the compensation that goes along with that.
Okay. Well, I think we're
Getting
along
closer.
the same mind frame here.
Yeah.
I just like I said, I played with that sentence trying to figure out how to word that, and using designated was probably the wrong word. So, and then on 19, we had this part of a packet, and we had a little consternation in pulling it out, but I think it's probably okay. I mean, some of the language you hadn't responded to, you'll see again here, obviously. The yellow at the top, we're still waiting for you guys to get back to us about that. We do believe that's a violation of bully. And the process is you would have to go through and sue them through small claims court to reclaim that money. So we're still waiting to hear back from you on that one. Down below, we left tier 1 and tier 2. I did accept your shall to may change down there, but we left tier 1, tier 2 because we think it's important to just clarify, for folks, because if I'm OPSERP and I don't really know all these ins and outs of these things, I might think this applies to me, and I think this just clarifies. I don't think it changes anything meaningful in the contract other than people go, well, am I tier 1 or tier 2? And then they'll find out they're OPSERP. So I believe we're all aligned down below that. And then on to the next page. I know we had discussions about this, about the 5 consecutive work days, request of the note. That's the 2 yellows that's in this section right below it. And I don't know that I heard any no's from you guys, but I also didn't see it in your proposal. So, I mean, obviously what we're trying to do is if you want the note, it's fine, but let us know when we're seeing the doctor, not after we get back, and then we have to go back and see the doctor and pay a second visit and do, copay and all that kind of headache. So that's the intent of those 2 sections. So I guess we'll wait to see if you want to respond to that in your next proposal. Down below, the first time we showed this to you under 4, well, we kept 3 in here as an option after the sick bank if you guys wanted to keep it. I know a few districts do that. I would say it's accessed very infrequently, but a couple groups do have it, like Roseburg comes to mind off the top of my head. But it would be after the sick bank if you wanted to keep it, and it usually gets used some really extraordinary circumstances. I mean, I see it used very, very rarely, but it's usually, when they do use it, it's like, okay, I understand why they're using that. It's like a very serious thing. So we left it in there, and I guess if the district is really really needs that out, we can have those discussions. Obviously, sick bank is an improvement for us too. Number 4, again, we're trying to figure out a way to, have a process for folks, because between sick leave bank, between PLO 3 months, between vacation, personal day, we're closing in on 6 months there for a lot of folks, and some more of paid time if they really get themselves into a situation where they need it. And with the laws, as I understand them, being 401ks or 403bs, if you get severe medical hardship, you can tap those without the penalties too, is my understanding. So that's why we're proposing this, because if you're an OPSERP and you're like Lisa or Lance or somebody here, or Paul, been here for years and years and years, come to work, then you go to retire, you have 300 hours of sick leave, and then it just goes poof. It doesn't seem like a fair trade for you being a good employee. And we used to be able to roll it to PERS, and it was kind of a win-win for everybody. But we don't have that option, for OPSERP. Believe me, I've tried with those folks to figure something out, but they're just not doing it. So this is our answer to that. And 20 days is 1 calendar month for the people that would use this, that would have this in reserve. So, and then on the back, I think we're all in alignment. We came back with 250. We felt that was a little closer to where we thought that would be, not such a high number, but also a number that would keep us solvent. Obviously, if we have that many people accessing sick bank at once, we're probably having a massive problem here. So that's why we came up with that number. And that's it for our proposals.
So,
Any questions?
Marissa, not to put you on the spot, but on the, what I'm going to, the requesting of notes for employees to return to work, that's something we do across the board for everybody.
Yep. Yep.
And when an employee's out for 4 days, when does the notification come in? How does that?
That doesn't come from HR. That typically comes from a supervisor, and it should be coming from a supervisor because it is in district policy.
It's in board policy, so
So-
the CBA could state all absences of 5 days or more will require a doctor's note before return, and then that way it's in there. So I think you're right, they need to know beforehand. So putting it in the CBA is that is the employee's responsibility to make sure that note is. I literally jotted that down, let's just add it then, because it's always a request.
So
Well, I think
my-
having that knowledge when people
Right,
are out,
so-
that's helpful because they don't want to pay a second copay and go back.
Right, for sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
so.
But what about the delay for people who have to get back into their doctor and get that note because doctors' offices are backed up? What if it takes them another 4 to 5 days to get that note and return back to work?
What do you, the return to work is not predicated on the note. The note is for the absences of 5 days or more, correct? Saying they were out for a medical reason. Am I not understanding it right?
Well, so the way I read this is kind of like that, is what if I'm on day 4, I know I need at least 1 more day of rest or what have you, and my worry is that we would be, and someone can't get in for 3 more days, but I'm well enough to come back to work. Maybe I missed 6 days, which we could, depending on what the condition is, we might need something for FEMLA.
Which would be the
Yeah.
doctor too.
So, what's that?
That would be the doctor too if you needed something.
Right, I just don't want to run into something that, could be eventually grieved because we're trying to keep someone out while they're
Yeah.
well enough to work.
But it doesn't say that. It just says you'll request the note
No,
before.
it says we may require it prior to the return of the employee to work. So we don't, I think what we're trying to say is maybe it doesn't have to be in hand, is that what we're saying? That at times somebody has come back pending the note in the next coming days?
Yeah, if it's like,
We would hate for someone
Is
to
that-
have to miss more work.
Is our language says require or
Yeah.
is that existing?
It says require, the
Yeah.
district may require prior to the return of the employee to work. And so
So-
we'd like them to be able to come back if their appointment's not till the next day, but they can come back on Monday, but they can't get in till Tuesday, is that what?
Yeah, I'm just worried about keeping somebody out while they're awaiting a doctor's note, or needing a doctor's note to be, so we can apply our practices consistently, but then being told, you can't require this because they're already back to work. So I'm just,
So what if you leave 3I up above and strike the second sentence. Because then it gets rid of that requirement.
So if, so you would be okay if we told someone while they're out, hey, you're gonna need to bring a doctor's note in before,
Within X days of return or something. Is that-
within a certain number of days of your return, but you don't have to sit there and stay home while you
Yeah.
wait for your doctor's appointment.
Yeah, that's not the,
Yeah.
that's not the intent.
Okay.
I think that got just kind of combined with the
Okay,
other section.
okay.
So. Yeah, the idea is just that they know, you know, because usually it's 5
And you
days.
don't want
is
us,
the-
you know, 3 days after they've been back to work going, oh, by the way, you need to go back and get the doctor's.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, when they've been out probably 3 or 4 days, like you're saying, it's probably like at that point, it probably, whatever the process is, they should, hey, you're gonna be out 5 days. Or maybe even simpler than that, saying, been out 3 days, you say, hey, if you're gonna be out 5 days, please bring us a note for your doctor, right? It could be something simple as that, right? We just want them to know before they come back so that they're not having to go and try to work and schedule an appointment and pay a second copay and all those kinds of things. That's what we're trying to avoid.
A lot of people don't know that they need to know.
Yeah, they're sick for a day, they're gonna be sick for a
Yeah.
couple days, and then it's like a week, you know? But on day 3 or something, the supervisor could say, hey, if you're out 5 days, please bring us a note. I mean, they could do something simple as that, you know?
All right.
Another question on 19, you, on 1B, the concern about prorating sick leave upon leave. Actually, you had mentioned in the first session that you believed it was illegal. The second session, we asked you if you found any information, you said legal was still backed up. So you actually were checking on that.
Not on B.
On
You ha-
1B,
No, I don't think so. You guys had it prorated mid-year somewhere in here, right?
On 19,
Down.
1B.
Yeah, I think it was on, well, no, 1B. Oh, okay, I see, you're saying prorated for part-time employees. I see what you're saying, yeah. No, I have not heard from that.
yeah, so that
Yeah.
was, I apologize, I thought
Yeah.
that was the one you said you were waiting on us.
But it's the other part.
I have
that's-
researched fully, I
Yeah.
cannot find, anything that would allow us to award sick leave based on, as long as we meet Oregon sick leave law, minimum 40-hour requirement after 91 days. I'm not sure how we,
So, yes, and, that's what I'll say. So the first part here, employees who leave the district, that sentence where it ends, final paycheck, I believe that's illegal under BOLI. The second piece was the piece of the proration that I was trying to get an answer to. So we both have pieces in there that we're trying to get answers to. And what I've been told by BOLI and other districts is that they can't do this. They have to go through small claims
correct,
to reclaim that money.
after the wages have been paid, correct?
Yeah, right.
Yes,
Well, that's why the first sentence is a problem. The last sentence, the proration may be fine, you're right. That's something that I'm still waiting to hear back, and I have not heard back from on that. So I will double check on that again.
But what Kim's saying is that we can withhold,
if you front load,
Mhm.
you can withhold the unearned portion of that front load.
So I get front loaded 2 weeks. I use all my 2 weeks, but I only work half a year.
Mhm.
And where are you finding that? Because I'm being told that's not the case, so
Okay.
we need to
Yeah,
sort
I
that out.
can, we can absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah,
if you-
as long as it meets Oregon sick leave law, the 40-hour minimum after 91 days of employment.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, well, I
That's-
gotta get a hold of them about the other piece anyway,
100%.
so,
That- If you could help us, because we
yeah.
certainly don't want to be doing it incorrectly. I've checked with, I could not find another district, including those that we talked about here, that don't do this.
Maybe it's policy, but it's not in the contract, so I'd have to, with the exception of one. But, well, that I deal with, sorry.
Okay. That's
So, so yeah, I gotta check on the other
Yeah,
one still again
please,
anyway,
that'd be
so
great.
I'll be happy
We
to ask
definitely
that question.
don't want to be practicing something that is not allowable for sure, so.
Yeah, because actually, now that I think about it, Bully's the one that told me that direct when I called and actually got a hold of somebody out there, or the manager or the supervisor or something like that. So pretty. But let me.
Perfect.
People are human; they make mistakes. So let me make sure that they're right. I'll check with our attorneys on that as well.
That'd be great, yeah.
Yeah.
And then do you have any, we were working on, well, we'll share more later, but working on costing, proposals out and that sort of thing. Do you have any districts that I can reach out to that cash out sick leave annually?
The cash out sick leave
Yeah.
annually.
Or
Ask
at
me that
discretion?
question Thursday at noon, and I'll have an answer for you.
Thank you. And that would be the discussion with North Marion or Dallas that's still pending? North Marion's next year, I'm sorry.
Ask me that question Thursday at noon and I'll have an answer
Gotcha.
for you.
Thanks. I just trying to cost it out and
Yeah.
see what the potential
I can
could
tell
be.
you that they looked at it, the group that I'm working with looked at it and said, well, what happens if you have 800 hours? That's a big cost, right? So they wanted to put a cap on the amount of days per year.
Those are the types
Yeah.
of, if
Yeah.
you're right on
And
where.
the second I have it,
Yep,
I'll send it to
perfect.
Dan.
You are right on where we're
Yep.
just, we're wanting to evaluate
Yep.
the option, yeah.
No, I know. I just,
Okay.
we're not done yet,
Okay.
so technically. Welcome. Other questions? All right, Dan, regale us.
All right. So I'd like to go back to your, since you're technically proposing your May 18th recognition proposal, so I had a few questions
All
on
right.
it. You know, as like these examples or these proposals you gave us just now kind of inch us towards agreement where there's, you know, kind of the normal give and take. In the recognition clause, I'm just curious as if, because you've got a few different things, you've got really kind of 3 areas where you're attempting to make changes. You have the strikeout of substitutes that would attempt or to try to bring substitutes into the
Right.
classified union. You've got the what's in throughout the contract, which is the change in the definitions of regular, full-time, and regular part-time. And then you have the piece about employees not scheduled less than 5 hours a day. So I'm just wondering, is
So. I
there a
would s-
priority here? Is there a, you know, we had some discussion during our work session around the substitute piece. I'm just trying to figure out if there's any breakthrough areas or areas that we could talk about towards trying to get this article closer to
So
TA.
I would say D through F. This is our current proposal. D through
Right.
F probably needs relooking at because of the simple fact that some things, now that Sunday's here and we know what passed,
Okay.
some of these things have changed.
Got
And
it.
I would say that that would also be for the substitute up above, like the
Okay.
strikeout. We do want to have a discussion about temporary work. We kind of had some of that, like you alluded to, in a work session, just understanding each other's position. I still believe that that's something that we can fix between that and the substitute language, that we could probably fix that so that it accomplish what the district wants without creating headaches for us. It'd probably be a really good topic to have that discussion in a work session to really drill down on that and make sure we understand each other's positions, because I do think there's not a lot of work in this article, believe it or not, now that we know what the laws are doing.
Sure.
It's really just that one kind of issue, so.
Okay. Great. All right, so we do have a paperclip for Ron.
Sorry, Ron.
Yeah, and so on top is a copy for everybody's, the TA. I've got the ones to be signed here. So you can kind of probably skip over the TA and move to Article 3, salary. I'll follow suit with some job descriptions.
All right.
See if I can snag it.
Okay.
Maybe we could share, and then you can keep it.
Okay.
So. All right, so as you are aware, we've been working on job descriptions related to what's currently educational assistants, special needs assistants, media assistants, and even what's currently autism specialist,
Autism assistant.
autism assistant. So, and so we've been sharing with you some brainstorms over the last several months regarding these job descriptions, and so we're bringing forth some job descriptions for you to be aware of, just to clarify under our understanding of bargaining rules and the contract. We don't bargain over job descriptions. We bargain over the placement of those positions based on job descriptions. So the short version of that is we wouldn't want to see a proposal come back where you're making edits to job descriptions. Now, if you're bringing a proposal back based on our placement, and you could point out to say, hey, Dan, we think the media assistant really belongs over here based on what you expect of that person on 1, 2, and 3 here, that would totally be within your lane and right to do that. I don't think it would be appropriate for you to be striking out job description language.
So we don't usually wade into those waters. I mean, there's always exceptions, but we don't usually wade into those waters. We usually, speaking about lanes, our lanes are the working conditions, the hours of employment, the benefits, the things that, you know, that the job would get, right? Like, so we may argue whether it should be 6 hours or 8 hours based on what you have out there, but
Sure.
we usually don't say that mopping the floor on Thursdays, we're not gonna have a real good opinion about that. That's just, that's management rights from
Yeah.
our point.
So with that, you have a job description for an instructional assistant 1, a job description for instructional assistant 2, a job description for a media assistant, and a job description for a special needs program support specialist, which was formerly known as the autism assistant. So, so you've seen some of those before, but they don't have the big watermark of draft on them anymore, or red lettering. So with that out of the way, we have a new salary proposal for you on, probably should just be easier if I look on my computer, where our proposal is, we put a chart there to show how these placements would happen. So we have the current title with the new title and then their column placement. So I want to back up a little bit and talk a little bit about Kim's presentation from last week. So if you remember, there was several examples using EAs and SNAs and some of the work we've done over time and identifying that as an area, those groups of EAs and SNAs as a group that we were going to emphasize some of our future proposals on it. So you're seeing that today.
Okay.
Also, if you go back and check that presentation, you'll notice that we said on there that the wage comparisons, that those positions were a little below on the average, were a little bit below. They were a little bit above when you take total compensation, when you throw our benefits into the mix. This proposal is a substantial increase for these two groups and definitely puts them above the average on the wage scale, and definitely far above the average when you take the total compensation, you throw the health benefits on top of that. So I just want you to be aware of the focus that this proposal is doing, which is 50% of your membership is going to is in the EA-SNA group.
Mm-hmm.
So so as far as the increases that you see in 3B, they're the same, but the fact that we've shifted several groups to the right into new columns, that makes a big difference for them. Kim, do you want to add anything to that at all? 'Cause I don't have the specific
Yeah,
details.
just that we are working on, just to give you an idea of the impact of that. It's looking at person by person. We're seeing EAs with an increase of 11.5% to 13.5%. We're seeing, IA2 who would become IA2s between 6% and 7%. And so being that is such a large proportion of the membership, it is a very large slice of the pie, but we're getting data figures together for you to show, what that total cost is. So that you guys can see that and help determine what's best for the membership, so.
Do you have that information for the columns listed under A here, like percentage or dollar amount or both would be helpful, but either or at least, so we know.
Where are they this year? Where would they be next year?
Yeah, based on this proposal.
100%. Can we email that to you or?
That would be awesome.
Perfect,
Help us, I mean, telling us is great, but I don't want to.
100%, because it's not across the board. As you
Yeah,
see,
course
there are,
Yep.
there are people making significant moves and there are people making much smaller moves.
Right.
And that's, that is how it, penciled out. But yeah, absolutely, want to share that. Yeah, I'll validate this, but I've got it literally on my screen right now. I'm positive I can send this.
Okay.
So a couple last comments on that. One of the things, we oftentimes talk about slicing the pie and all those kinds of things is that when you take this proposal doesn't leave a lot of pie left to shift around to other groups within your membership, because this is a proposal that's impacting about 50% of your membership. So just wanted that, since it's on record and everything, for people to hear that. So as you think about counter proposals on this, is that this proposal doesn't have a lot of wiggle room because of how many people it's impacting.
Just remember, pie comes after dinner, Dan.
I significantly remember Vance going, we just want a bigger pie. So,
It's a mini pie, not a Costco.
okay, so I think there was one other thing is that on our next session on the July 10th, Kim will be presenting, because we've each made two at that, well, unless you counter propose, unless you just accept our proposal today, hoping we can get done. I mean, we would buy pizza
Well,
tonight.
you're talking to the wrong guy.
Okay.
I didn't find anything stellar in this.
Forgot. I need to figure out what your version of stellar is. But if you did accept, since we've both given two proposals
Mhm.
on the 10th, we'll be presenting, what are the total costs of the proposals to date? So your two proposals, our two proposals, what does this cost the district?
Yep.
So, all right, moving on down, a few other things just to draw your attention to.
Looks like you're still proposing a 3-year.
Yes, thank you for catching that.
Yep.
The fingerprinting we did, I think we just accepted something we saw in your proposal that it would be reimbursed on the first check following successful. I think we did do a slight wording adjustment, successful completion of probationary period. We did increase the shift differential to 80 cents per hour. And then we did increase the longevity stipends. They are not annual, but they are on those 8, 10, 15, 20. And then we also at 25. So instead of having the 25 to 29, we just at 25
Or more.
or more, and that is an annual.
Gotcha.
So we did increase those, and we increased the 25 or more to annual. So we have still the working out of classification, which we're pulling over from a different article. And then here's that step placement review that had been part of your reclass proposal. So, or it had been in your reclass proposal.
Right.
So our proposal is if during the probationary period, an employee feels that they had not been placed at the appropriate step on the wage scale, they may submit a request in writing to the assistant superintendent to have placement reviewed. That request should contain, and we pulled some of your language, the district assistant superintendent will share the request at the next scheduled labor management meeting, and will provide a written response, share that with the union chapter president. But the district retains the right or the responsibility, sole discretion to for placement decisions.
So explain that last one to me. Because currently we meet over new positions or we bargain over existing one. What do you mean by that statement? Do you mean that? I guess I don't, yeah, what do you mean by that statement? I don't get the last one.
So let's say somebody in the probationary period comes and says, hey, I think I was placed wrong. They bring forward a resume, let's say, hey, I forgot to include this on my resume. And we don't see the experience they're presenting as, requisite experience to be placed on a higher step.
Right.
So currently, we have the sole responsibility for placement decisions. And
Yeah, you're talking about somebody coming off the street that you want to evaluate their experience when you place them accordingly. Like
Yeah.
5 years with school, you might put me at this step versus
Right.
this step. Okay, so what about the person that's currently here who feels that there was a mistake made and they try to show you that?
So, I mean, if they show us that and we find reason to believe that a mistake was made, error was made, they omitted information, or they didn't realize the importance of
Right.
updating their resume, that kind of thing. That we've made corrections.
I know, I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to understand, because that's kind of a broad statement. I think with new hires, this would be right.
But if
The
we
committee's
did,
making the decision otherwise, right?
what's that?
The committee's making the decision otherwise, right? The labor. management
There is
committee.
there is no labor management process.
Oh, that was in the old one. The old version we had, okay. That makes more sense.
So we're not taking placement on the wage scale to a committee. I mean, that right now, there's no language in the contract that says those placements are. We want to be transparent and be
Mhm.
sharing with you
Mhm.
like we've done to say, because I don't want to also be accused of individually bargaining with
Sure.
people that bring these things forward. I think it's probably good for you guys to understand our rationale for why we did or did not
Mhm.
award step placement, but at this same
Right.
time, we're not going to turn that over to a committee when we're the ones ultimately responsible for those placement decisions.
And that's why I'm asking these questions, because I guess I didn't catch that, because it said something about the labor management committee here. I guess I just kind of glossed over that. I shouldn't have. So, yeah, but we'll share at the next labor management committee meeting. So I assumed that was where you guys were having this discussion. It's more, I misunderstood that. That's not
Well,
You're not saying that's a
few-
committee that's gonna
they
hear
are
it,
few
right?
and far between. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't get many, but like we just had one and I shared it with you and shared
Mhm.
the decision with you, just because, again, I didn't want to be having rumors of special treatment or
sure.
dealing going on.
And also, just to be clear, if we put contract language in, you're not directing anyone. So just that's
Yeah.
that's the point of contract language, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so yeah, I understand what you're saying here now. I think I've got a grasp of it.
So trying to come up with some language that
Yeah.
identifies a process.
Yep, I appreciate
So-
that.
Okay, so, and then insurance, even though we did include it in this proposal, but it's identical to our previous one. So there are no changes to what you've seen before on Article
Okay.
4 insurance.
Understood.
And then if we're going in chronological order,
And for future reference, you really don't need to include this. I mean, as long as you communicate that you're not
Okay.
gonna change your proposal. I mean, let's save even more paper.
okay,
You know, we can say that in the beginning, like we did.
got it.
Yeah.
So
Is 11 not done? I thought our last proposal you guys thought was okay, but clearly I must have got that wrong.
So I know that, so let's pause for a second.
Okay.
So Article 9, discipline and discharge.
Yeah.
So as you know, law was passed.
Mhm.
So instead of having you kind of explain your position, we just kind of found out about this week and we're getting ready for everything else. So after we caucus, we will come back with a proposal.
Okay. There's, I mean, I think it is good to have some discussion because I think there's some timeline extensions you wanted in that article. And I think there's some things that we asked for in addition to that article that, one might make the other more palatable is what I'm trying to say. Like,
Sure.
if you wanted extensions and we have, people.
Do you
on
want to
review.
have some of that conversation now, or do you want to have that conversation after we bring a proposal?
We can do it after we propose. I'm just letting you know that I think that some of what you want in there from our side of the table would be doable if some of what we want is doable. Obviously, I'm not talking about Just Cause, but
Mhm.
the other requests we're making feel like they kind of go hand in hand a little bit.
Well, yeah, so when we look at, I'm looking at Article 9 here. I mean, I think Article 9 and 10 sort of go together.
Yeah,
So maybe let's save that for after caucus and
okay.
when we bring a new proposal forward.
That sounds
We'll
good.
kind of skip through 9 and 10. So on 11.
Yep.
So it is our previous proposal and.
Okay.
So this, I'm,
Right next to Article 11, I put the copy.
so if you look at what we handed you there. I'm not looking at it right.
Oh,
It's
I
your-
didn't print that copy.
Oh, you didn't print that?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't realize I wanted to. I gave them our previous proposal
Okay.
and I just put this in the document for you to view if you wanted to.
Oh, and where
I
can I
can
find it?
get it's right next to, it's highlighted yellow,
Oh,
right next
got
to
it.
our counter.
Thank you. Okay, so here's, yes, I think we're close on this one. However, and maybe we can print some copies out for you. There's several green areas that we do not have record of having agreed to. And then I think this is also one where there may be some old, you're pulling from an older version of the contract. You had said about your server going down. So
Yeah,
we just have some confusion on this one. So we thought that, so our previous proposal from which one?
yeah, I think we had like 2 and 3 kind of the titles got messed up, if I remember right. Like one was work week and the other was like work schedule or something like that. I believe that we flagged that error last time. They got merged somehow.
So maybe take a look at what you proposed last time with our 621 proposal.
Okay.
And kind of look at those side by side.
Sure.
But I do think that the area that we've sort of disagreed on, not sort of, we have disagreed on in terms of that work week in the 30 minutes. I don't think this is, actually, I think this is the best venue to sort it out because this is where we have a record of it and we can, versus if we just kind of agreed to disagree,
Mhm.
then the next time this comes up, there's an employee caught in the middle of something and we're dealing with a potential grievance and we're dealing with, going back and looking at recorded, who said what. I just think that this is the best space to sort out how we interpret this work week language. And so I think it's something that we do need to spend time to figure out. Because I think, again, we haven't encountered this too much, partly because it's something we're not inclined to do frequently at all. But with that said, we also don't want to give up the right to be able to do that if there's a situation that warrants it. So I do think that we need to spend time on that particular section to make sure that when we ratify the contract, we're agreeing to that. Because again, I think the alternative is one of these days it will happen, and then we're gonna have an employee caught in the middle of a situation, and then we're going to be going through processes that could have been avoided.
Mhm.
So that's. And if we want to have a deeper discussion about it, we can do that. Again, just to go back, our intent on changing this language was really in the. Let's see if I can find. So really was in our, if you look at our proposal, that our intent in all of this was in 3B, where adjustments to work schedules not agreeable to an employee shall be discussed with the union and the employee before implementation. So that was kind of where this started. And then when we started having discussions about the language up above, then that's when we realized, oh, we don't even agree on this stuff. So I just want to bring it back to why we even changed the language in the first place. But I do think it's important that we do agree on how we interpret the language above it. If that makes sense.
Right. Well, I mean, when I read this language initially, the way I read it, you can move them 30 minutes a week, not a day. That's the way I read it. Then Vance told me that you guys, the practice here has been shifting, the 30-minute start time, right? So that's why we added back to you per day in the proposal, because if you read it literally the way it is, at least the way I read it, I mean, it says work week and it's just a total of 30 minutes, right? So we were trying to like capture the practice with our proposal when we said per day. So I understand what you're saying. I just want to be clear that this is why we put the proposal we did to you. It was for that reason, to try to capture what you guys have been doing and has been working as far as I know, for the most part. So, I mean, there's different ways to look at this. You're right. And I think that if we want to go through and figure out something that's better, clearer, easier, or we live with the language and I guess apply it as we feel it's applied, it will spawn agreements probably at one point, but let's hope the whole contract doesn't hinge on this one section.
Right. Well, and I do think that 30 minutes per day, again, what we talked about is if you look at Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, we have very little wiggle room in Roman numeral 1 because they're either a 7, 7.5, or an 8-hour employee. There's not much movement we can do there before someone's maxed out at 40 hours. Or but they could go from 7.5 to 7.
Or to 8.
Or to 8. Yeah.
And I think that's,
And 3, we have again, very, very few employees that are less than 20 hours per week. It's that middle group where, someone could vary from more than 20 hours to 35, where we do have some flexibility.
but I think that's the crux of what we're talking about, because we see A is talking about, I started 7:30 to 3:30 or whatever. And then, because if something happens, you need, we need to shift you to 7 instead of 7:30, or we need to delay you to 8 instead of 7:30. But you still get off at your normal 6 hours or whatever, right? You're talking about them shifting into a different pay classification. So it feels almost like two separate tracks, what we're talking about. Because we see that as them keeping their 6-hour shift, for instance, it might get shifted up and down each week by 30, not each week, but this week or something, because you need something special. And the next week, and a few weeks later, it could be shifted the other way. Whereas you're talking about literally giving them more hours or taking away hours, it sounds like. And that's the piece that I think that's the different discussion. We're having two different discussions almost about what that language is. And if we can get that rectified, or have a section for talking about each, or something, I think that would address it for both of us. If we can figure out how that would work, if they're what's the mechanism for moving them up in hours or down, and what's the mechanism for, we have language and recall too that talks about moving them down a bit, but what would be the mechanism and how would that affect them? And and then what if you need to shift them during that time because of school starts opening early for some reason, So I think we have two issues here, really, So and we're trying to put it into one issue, and I think that's the problem. We might need a second paragraph or section, to kind of talk through both issues.
Well, and again, if you take the last two sentences in 3A, where minor adjustments up to 30 minutes, so plus or minus, are not considered changes within the scope of this provision. Major changes, so more than 30 minutes, will be discussed with the union prior to implementation. And those are where, if we're increasing somebody by an hour or decreasing them by an hour, which I'm not sure even the last time we've done, those would be discussed with the union prior to implementation.
I understand what you're saying.
So
I think
we're
we have
talking
fundamental
about work
difference.
week, and then
before that sentence.
3B is talking about the work schedule, which is what you're talking about, is taking somebody and
Shifting them, yeah.
shifting it.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, but go back and look at what you proposed last time in our last proposal, because there are some areas you highlighted green that we do not have.
Yeah, and I'll take a look at that. We flagged a couple that were merger errors, and the other one I think it might have been old contract language too, so we will definitely take a look at that. That's pretty easy to do. You can do that in caucus, actually.
All right, well, you already presented your reclass procedure, so vacations. There's nothing changed in here other than we changed it from 180 days to 6 months and that, so otherwise everything else is the same. So move past that one real quick, and then holidays. We did change your number 4 to just specifically, we're talking about Juneteenth. So should the school year be extended beyond the observed Juneteenth holiday, 10-month employees shall receive it as a paid holiday. So I'm not sure if that's what your sentence was aiming to do, but we just thought would be specific.
Yeah, we've got these holidays that kind of move around, right, versus being set in stone. So yeah, I mean, that was one of the concerns, was that.
So I'm not sure what it was intended to do. You know, I think your previous proposal.
I think the other piece of that was sometimes there's issues with Independence Day, but that's pretty rare. So
What yours said is any employee that has a calendar going through or that works through a holiday above in section 1 shall receive that as a paid holiday as well. But I just thought that was pretty confusing because, you know, our 10-month employees do work through some of those and don't have those as holidays. So I think we're better off being specific about what we're trying to offer, and
sure.
so there's that. You've given us your emergency school closure, you gave us your sick leave. Our training proposal, we brought back the same one. Yours did not include
We didn't have it broken out by the credits for what.
Yeah.
Yeah, we picked a number that we felt applied. Basically, part of this was because you kind of been doing it a little bit, you know, and so we kind of felt that $750 would cover what you're talking about, plus an extra $16 or something. But that's why we came up with that number. It was that $750. But I think we did say that we could have some more discussion and we could incorporate in some of the tuition to make it very clear that it's included.
I think I'm a little confused here. So what was missing from your last proposal was a lot of process language. I know that, you know, right now, one significant so the tuition, our last proposal is that we would have a $10,000 amount for these different, and yours was 20,000.
But you're stacked over the years too, right?
Yeah, and I know that you said that we didn't do that. I guess what we'd like to see is some agreement around all the process language and spacing those things out. I think that's important in this article. I think if we got agreement on that, we could probably talk a little bit about the dollar amount.
So on the process piece, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think we're open to the idea of saying that this can be used for tuition reimbursement, but I think pegging it to a certain thing is problematic, because we can, I mean, with our $750 offer, it would cover what you were asking for to be put in the contract language too. But rightly so, you said we should make it clear that it should say tuition reimbursement would be accessed from this fund too. We agreed with that. So I don't think we have a problem putting process in. I just don't think we want to peg it to one specific thing or another. I think we want to focus more on who gets it, how they get it, you know, what things they can use it for, that it can be used for even education that's not related to your job function. You know, those kinds of things are like more important pieces for us, I think. And we could show you that if you want us to come back with that, with adding the piece about the tuition reimbursement, because we didn't specifically say that. You're right.
Well, I do think it's important to have the dollar amount set aside and then caps for each of the types of things. So there's a cap on how much tuition reimbursement that someone can get. We'd like to have a cap on professional development. Because otherwise you could end up having somebody, exhaust a majority of that pool if they go with a more expensive, program. And so so that's why I think it's important to have, here's the pool and here's a cap on each of the different things that we're providing.
Didn't we have that when we said 750 and was it 1,500 or something? And then they could come back for more if there was some left in the pool at the end of the year. I feel like we had that process in there. It just didn't specifically speak to tuition.
So
So,
for
I think that-
tuition, it's really best for employees if you have it set at credit hours specifically, just because the cost of those credit hours increases every single year. So if we have language similar to what's in here right now, if Western Oregon University's rates go up in the next year, it just guarantees that we will cover more for the employee and one full class will be paid for.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I mean, we're proposing 1-year deal at this point, but so I think we have that covered, but yeah, in the future, that would be more. If we had a deal with more years, that would make more sense. So, well, we can look at that.
Okay.
I think we're just trying not to make it overly processed, right? Like we want to keep the process fairly simple, very straightforward. Just not a ton of hoops because we're worried that people will not want to jump through them and then we just sit there and the money just doesn't do anything, right? Goes back into the school's funds and that's about it. So not the point of the process, right? So we can look at that and we'll take into account what you said too. It makes sense too. If we have a multi-year deal, it will make a lot more sense. So was there anything else? Do we have more? We have more.
I
We have
think-
23, don't we?
So 23, yeah. So you're still proposing,
In accordance with a discipline article.
yeah.
I mean, we've done a number of areas. It seems to be very straightforward. And now with just cause in the mix, it really doesn't, I mean, it seems like it would be a simple process just to either they did something to get them in trouble or they didn't, right? We have a process laid out in our discipline article for that.
So you're still. Go back and open that one up.
I think it just says in accordance with Article 10 or 9 or whatever, 9, whatever discipline article is.
So I'm just wondering why it would not be important to let somebody know that. If someone is violating. If someone engages in an unlawful strike. Why it would not be important to say that could lead to discharge.
It would be a violation of the agreement. We already have a process in place under Article 9.
Why wouldn't we want it outlined in the article that talks about strikes specifically, that if someone engages in an unlawful strike, they could be discharged?
I think because we have Article 9, I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot here. I think we have that covered under a discipline article, right? I mean, if you commit a fact and
I
that
have
creates.
to go
a
back and
cause-
check to see it. I'm not sure if it's listed.
Well, it may not be listed as an unlawful strike, but it would be still listed under the other things that you're disciplined for, right? I mean, you don't have everything listed under that article, I mean, you have to go through. The process is the bigger piece, right? You have to, if they are, have a bad work performance, right? There's a process with that, if they have tardiness problem, there's a process. That's what I'm saying is that this would be another thing. Because I don't think we have tardy specifically labeled in Article 9 either. But it is a thing, right? So it would be just that it would go underneath, follow the exact same process as Article 9 says for all other, this is how.
Well, but in those cases, I mean, so the examples you gave would follow that article talks about progressive discipline and someone's not going to get, dismissed over tardies unless it's, over, with following progressive discipline. But this article is clearly identifying that if someone engages in an unlawful strike, that they could be discharged for that. I think that that's an important thing to call out. I mean, these things are super rare. But if someone attempts to engage in that, they need to know that they could face discharge for that. So.
Well, still had a clause that has, right now, the current contract language has a list of things in there, right? There are no warning letter needed, right, to be disciplined, more severely. I would guess that we could put that under there if you feel that that's important. Because you already have a section for that, right? I mean, if that's the concern.
All right. You might see that later. All right, term of the agreement, so we did have a counter proposal there for you, so we agreed with your language in 28-1 around that negotiations of a successor agreement shall begin on or after April 1, and yes, we are still asking for a 3-year agreement. So, but the
We're working
other,
on it, we're getting closer. The journey of 1,000 steps starts with one, right?
so I think that's it for our proposals, so.
We're gonna go dig in on 21 and see if we can get you something with that.
And we will take a look at what you gave us on these and see what we can do.
All right. And if we get something else from your, point of clarification before we stop here, on your proposal, the categories you've broken up at the top, and I guess I'll address it to Kim or Dan. Is that with the raises below factored in?
Say that again.
So like,
Article 3, the table at the top,
yeah,
they would be moved into that column, and then whatever that column is for 23,
Would get
24, 100%. I mean, yeah, they would.
so that,
live in-
you're setting the base wage and then you're gonna give them whatever we bargained below, is what you're saying. The 125 in this case.
They would move to that column, and whatever that column is assigned
Yeah.
for 23, 24 would be their wages.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
No, we're saying the same thing.
Yes,
Okay,
their rate would be whatever their cell in that letter column turned out to be.
sure.
So some folks are currently in D, they would be moving to F and then get whatever's applied in whatever is negotiated into for F.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go double check that you should have that grid here in just a little bit. It's got by title, by step, and what the
Right.
percentage changes.
But I mean, it's important for us to have all that, so we're having the same discussion you are in caucus, so. We have disagreements are based on different disagreements, not understanding, so. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much.
All right, who wants to go first?
We have
Willie?
one, so,
What's that?
we have one, so.
Yeah, it's coming around,
Didn't make
so,
it to you.
didn't make it to me.
So, well, I was gonna send some that way, but
Oh, well,
keep one, Dan.
okay,
Oh, I guess Vance wants to get on it. All right, cool. Are we recording? Are we on?
yes.
Are we on? Are we on? All right. So Article 21, we took into consideration what you were saying. We did add under B, you see greened out process. We did think that was reasonable and made sense. We didn't adjust the other pieces because we really don't think it makes sense for us to tie it to Oregon, whatever, school district specific, they're all different. Why not do, University of Oregon, right? Well, it's more expensive, but I mean, the idea being is that we want to have a simple process, how it works, what they can do. We feel the 750 gets them there. We still have the process built into this where at the end of the year, if it's more, they do more, they can have a second bite of the apple if there's funds left. And that's existing language. So the amounts are the same. We did include your process for, the tuition. We did change the title here to say tuition and professional growth like you guys did.
Well, I mean, so we're not gonna be able to agree to have, coursework at a variable university. Every place you have sets it at a particular university.
No, the amount is 750.
That's not.
But the tuition has to be,
Tuition doesn't have an amount limit on it.
The whole
Only
amount,
PD.
whatever you do under any of this article, is
Oh.
750.
Cause it's just listing under PD is 750.
Gotcha.
Tuition- Okay, I see.
Yeah, but
So
if you
really
look at
that
the-
750 is
If you look
up
at
under
the top, we
A.
added tuition and PD to the same title, right? If that's not
see,
clear
I just
enough, we
think
can do
that
yeah.
part of, if we go back to what we were trying to expand here for, is we really wanted opportunities for, pathways for, people to potentially become teachers.
Sure.
And so,
As one pathway, yeah, we agree.
I mean,
Yeah.
as one, and right now is that having, university credits is an option, is gonna far exceed $750.
In your proposal, it said 4 credits annually. That would be once a year.
And that's gonna be that's gonna be a couple thousand.
$184 a credit.
What's that?
$184 a credit, right? When I looked up Oregon.
Something like that
Oregon
right now.
University-
In-state.
Yeah, right now,
Yes,
correct,
right now.
yes.
So,
Which is 736 if I remember right, which is slightly less than 750.
736.
okay, I see what you're saying there.
Yeah. If we didn't make it clear enough, I mean, we did change the title up above, but if we needed to make some more changes back here to make it clear that it's for both, but that's pretty easy to do.
The longest sentence.
Oh, wow, yeah.
As far as, I know that we want to broaden the purposes of this, but, I do think the district is still going to want some measure of control in terms of what we're reimbursing, so, does not have to pertain to their job, but it should have to something to do that's going to, is going to be a return on investment for the district in terms of someone becoming a teacher, someone pursuing a job in a different department. I think the broadness of does not have to pertain to their job.
Well, specifically why we put that in there is for the food service person, if they has to pertain to their job, how would they ever do anything different? So if you guys wanted to show us some language on a counter that spoke to that point, I don't think we'd have a problem looking at that. But we've had people in the past being told, well, it has to be pertaining to your job, right, over the years. And so what do you do if you're a food service and you'd like to ultimately be a clerical? How do you get there, So that's the idea there for that language. If there's a way to connect those points, if you guys have some language that would
I
do
thought we
that.
We
proposed.
did propose in our previous, and the one that we provided today, under tuition reimbursement. So it's relevant to an employee's work assignment, other district positions, or in the pursuit of a teaching license. So anything within district employment.
Could be tech department,
Yeah.
could be custodial, could
And
be.
we'd be open to some other, enhancing of that language to broaden that, but just to universally say does not have to pertain to their job is probably going to be difficult to agree to.
Yeah. Well, I think there is an element out there that people, well, I know there is, that feel like, well, it's a benefit for working here, but if I want to just educate myself, so I'm more educated too, right? But I hear what you're saying about that piece there. I know that is a concern of our folks as well. But we can relook at that piece a little closer. I think the big thing that we're worried about is that people are going to say, here's the reason I want it, and then they're going to be told no. So how do we address that? Well, I mean, it's not really in these words, right? Yours or our proposal. How do we address that? Unless we have something broader like we have there. If you say, hey, I'm in food service and I want to be an SNA, or I want to be a teacher, pre-kindergarten teacher, or whatever it might be, right? Like, it might seem like a very lofty goal. Will those people is all they have to do is just tell you what they want to use it for, or will it be evaluated, I guess?
It does say will be eligible for reimbursement if it relates to another job in the district.
Okay. That's definitely a concern for us, so I guess we can, okay. All right. Well, we'll take another
I
stab.
mean,
at
we've
it.
taken we've taken an article from our last bargaining, which was very minimal opportunity. We broadened it this last go around, and we're broadening it here. I mean, I just think that
Some of this is fear of the unknown too.
Right. I mean,
Sure.
like, what kind of limitations are you wanting to put on it? What type of classes do you not want people to take?
I think that would really depend, like, ultimately, because your degree program, you'll have your general requisites, and I think that typically a general requisite would be something eligible for tuition reimbursement. And if that class is relevant to your pathway to another district position, or if it's relevant to another district position, I think that would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. But for the most part, we're not gonna have a lot of that unless it's something like, I can't even think of a random class off the top of my head that doesn't relate to general education requirement, honestly.
Right.
I mean, the
Okay.
purpose of this should be for retention of employees.
Yeah, I agree.
So if we're attempting, so,
PD credit or something.
you know, so if the purpose of this is to retain employees in the district, then the investment should be for a position or a training opportunity that retains them in the district. It shouldn't be to train them to go elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, I think some of this is just concern.
So I think the
Things that have been
previous
said in the
language
past.
had it to be, it only could do with your current job, you know, or, you know, it didn't have any, we didn't want anyone, you know, moving out of food service into tech or something like that, you know, we didn't want to lose our valuable SNA and have them become a teacher, you know, I think there was some of that mentality is we want to keep you where you're at, but we want to develop growth, but we don't want to develop something that somebody can just leave us.
Get your skills here and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, we understand that. I think some of this is just hearing it here at the table because I've been inundated with things that have happened in the past, right? So there's a lot of fear about how we do some of this stuff, but I think that's good explanation. I think we'll take another stab before we ask you to respond, if that's okay with you guys, because I feel like this is valuable. I mean, what do you think? I think this is valuable information to maybe clean up the counter a little bit. Are you okay with that?
I think so. I mean, I'm trying to think of scenarios that people have talked to me about, you know, they want to take a health and wellness class. Well, it doesn't really pertain to their job. It pertains to them personally and performing better in their job, but it doesn't pertain to their job. It doesn't pertain to another district job unless they're trying to be a school nurse, but that's, you know, so.
I guess it's just a lot out there. We
Yeah, I
can't-
mean,
a lot of
I think,
examples.
I do
Right.
think those are some, that's a
would be-
that's a very valid question.
Yeah, somebody wants to
Um,
take, you know, aerobics classes,
Nutrition.
yeah, that's probably,
Right.
I mean.
But it doesn't
that-
really fit what you guys were saying. Or, I mean, not that you don't want that, it just doesn't fit what I saw written. So,
Yeah.
we can
I think
take
like
another
a health
stab
and,
at
I think
it.
a health and wellness, you know, is like, I think,
At a college, right? I mean, not at a gym or I mean, see, that's where it gets tough, right?
Right.
Because,
You've seen me, right? I'm not
Oh,
talking,
stop.
I'm not talking at a gym.
Well, I think the other piece is like example I heard from somebody a while back was, well, I just need to basically take a class to learn how to be organized, which sounds really weird, but it's a thing, apparently, because a lot of people have trouble organizing things. And they felt it would make them more productive because they're not starting one project, stopping, going over here, starting, you know, we all know people like that, right? You know, but it probably would, more and more think about it, it probably would be the exception rather than the standard of the rule. But I guess is there a way to leave any flexibility to say related to the school or otherwise approved by the district or something like, you know what, why don't we put that back to you? Because then we can add that language and maybe that would allow us a way to kind of square that, you know, that circle.
on the dollar amount, I can't remember if I brought this up in the earlier session, is if we, right now, you know, obviously we're hoping for a 3-year deal.
Right.
And we haven't had, you know, we haven't come close to the 12,000. I'm just wondering, but we are adding tuition, so maybe that would get some, you know, if there would be some openness to some language about, you know, if we, you know, far exceed the amount that, you know, the district agrees to come back to the table.
I think we
to-
have that
to-
in existing language, don't we? I believe we have that in here already. At the end of the old language.
We said we'd give you a
When
report,
we
but
address the matter, income funds and professional development pools. So, if funds become exhausted, additional professional development is requested of the unit immediately to discuss the matter. So I guess we have saying we'll discuss it, but I think when we originally put that language in, it was with that bent that if we needed more, we could probably find more for it. We just have to
Okay.
talk about how much we need.
okay.
I don't think that's a problem. I think really what we're trying to do is pick a number rather than have it float, you know, like it went up from 10 or 11 grand last time up to 14.5 and now it's back to, you know. I think just picking a number, leaving that number, a lot of the other districts I deal with have like between 15 and 25,000 is the number. That's just the number, you know. And inflation hasn't quite caught up to that yet for most of these groups, you know, they've had it for a while. And they don't have any requirements to hold it in that account beyond the year, right? So a lot of times they do exactly, you guys have done fund what's left for the next year, put the difference in, and, or sometimes it goes back to the district depending on what's going on. But picking one number that we think will work, especially if we end up with a multi-year deal, right? If we end up with a multi-year deal, then picking one number rather than having to just keep bouncing around and try, it seems simpler, you know, from us. That's whatever that number is.
Okay.
But we'll take another stab with your guys' language and maybe add a sentence to that and see if that gets us closer, then we'll,
So you're
Right
gonna
back
come
to-
back with something different.
we're gonna counter our counter.
Okay, I love it.
I know you do. You don't see it very often. All right.
So there are, so just take that. All right, so we've got 9 and 19 coming. So there's one change in 9, and that is in the 3 non-probationary employees. I think there's actually a couple word just to make it more grammatically correct, or added a word. So anyways, a non-probationary employee may be disciplined or discharged for the following causes in accordance with state law. So obviously we've now see that laws passed to provide just cause for classified employees, but that hasn't been fully fleshed out yet. I think there's probably some work to be done on that, so.
Rulemaking committees.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, so we thought we'd just broaden that there, to say in accordance with state law. So, that's our counter proposal for,
So it says non-probationary employees may be disciplined for a discharge for the following. Okay. Yeah, okay. The problem I think we have here too, though, is the way the bill of the law reads. And I'm not part of that committee fleshing out those things. It says all classified
Right.
employees shall. That part I put in, but the rest
Right.
didn't. No.
so I can say
sorry.
that, I think that that's partly, we're in a kind of an interesting dynamic here right now with the rulemaking, because, I can tell you, we're not going to agree to just cause for
Probationary.
probationary. So now if the law and the rule makers come out, then, we might be back at the table talking about that, but,
Yeah, no,
so I thought broad at this point was a good place to start.
right.
Before we get to 19, can we talk a little bit about your 9 and 10, since they do kind of go together? So in your 9, you added some language around if an employee makes the district aware they intend to file a grievance over a suspension.
Which section? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, this,
9.
this would be
4D.
4D.
Scrolling down. Okay. Or D, there I'm with you.
Yeah, D and E, so that if if a grievance is intended to be filed, that things would stop until that process
Yeah.
was
Until-
completed. So,
Right.
and then you have similar language in your grievance article. So I'm just wondering, where does this exist anywhere else?
So, it's rife in the private sector. Public sector, there's a number of public groups, specific schools, I could not tell you because I just haven't dealt with a lot of discipline with them, to be really honest with you. But generally, the thought process is, you're alleging this, but until it's proven, right, why would we punish somebody for something that is not proven yet? Once the process is complete, it's proven, either they're found guilty or they're not, and at that point, they would serve the suspension
But
or not.
the issue is not necessarily whether you know, whatever the infringement was, is, you know, a grievance is whether the contract was violated or not, or in the case of a discipline, whether, you know, just cause standard was met or not. It doesn't really, you know, the person could have, you know, been, I mean, you take an example of just maybe some general misconduct goes on, but the district fails to meet a timeline. Okay, it doesn't issue the discipline in an appropriate amount of time. Doesn't mean the misconduct didn't happen,
Yeah, it's procedural.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, so I guess, you know, we're not asking for an arbitrator to come in and determine whether the person stole something, the person, you know, came to work impaired. You know, we're asking an arbitrator to determine whether the contract was followed or not. And so, in those cases where, you know, we suspend somebody for misconduct, you know, give them a day's unpaid suspension. So say, okay, yep, you're not coming to work next Wednesday, unpaid, and, you know, a grievance is filed, and it takes weeks, if not longer, to go through that process. And if the arbitrator says, yeah, district, you didn't follow the contract here in this one little part, so that, you know, we just pay the person back.
Yeah, but the damage is done, right? They have a hole in their paycheck already when they didn't need to occur, that didn't need to occur at all until we finish the process, right? That's the difference, I think. And the other piece too is that, I mean, sometimes we don't agree on the facts, and we do need an arbitrator to tell us what happened, right? Because we believe this is our scenario, and this is your scenario, and we're not agreeing. So an arbitrator would make that decision for us, whether who proved their case, right? Not just procedural, but who's actually right. And so we're penalizing them this pay when
So
they
you would-
may not be guilty of
what's-
the infraction.
In what scenario would an arbitrator go in there and reevaluate and they would investigate, they would pull in witnesses?
No, we would present to the arbitrator, this is our, for lack of a better term, theory of the case. Here's yours. We believe they're wrong because of these things. We couldn't corroborate their witnesses. We couldn't, you know, whatever the reason may be, but they're relying on these people, one person accounts, and we believe that that's not appropriate because we have, you know, we have a person said something the other way. That, we don't believe you proved your case, essentially, right? That would be our argument. The arbitrator would look at all the facts and decide who's right? That would be an example of that. Some of them could be processed like you're talking about. You missed a timeline, but you still disciplined them, or you didn't follow this part of the contract like you're saying. I mean, it's a wide range of things that can go to the arbitrator. They can't modify the contract, but they can definitely determine who's right in some cases. So this person is found to be innocent. They've still had this, let's say it's a 2-day suspension. They've missed 2 days of pay, it's put them behind on their mortgage, let's say. Now they're, you know, because a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. Now they've taken this damage and taken that penalty on their payment, whatever it may be. They've already served that, and then they're ultimately found to be not guilty of the offense, the discipline, but they've already paid a price. That's where it's not real fair. They still will pay the price at the end of the process if they're wrong. That's the tenet of how these are done typically in a lot of areas, because you don't. It's kind of like why we have, you know, so many appeals for, you know, this is going to be a bit of a jump for like the death penalty, right? Because we want to make sure that we're right, because that's a serious thing for them, right? Not as serious, but still losing paycheck, you know, is serious business for our folks. So we want to make sure we've done everything we can to make sure that they in fact did commit the crime, so they have to do the time.
Well, I think that the idea of having those examples of our theory of the case, I mean, most grievances are not related to what you believed happened or what I believed happened, but whether a contract was followed. And those are, to me, much more, you know, pretty easy, and we haven't had very many.
So it sounds like you can agree to this and not have a problem.
Well, and I know that your answer typically is, well, you could be the first. This just doesn't exist in school districts.
I don't, you know, and I'll be really honest with you, it has not been an issue in a lot of places, so we've had some discipline stuff here recently, but I would have to go look and see if that's the case. I know there's many public contracts that it does exist in, whether they're school specific, I don't know that. I'll tell you, the private sector, you guys are always, they're always, you know, lashing you with the private sector doing things. This is very common. This is extremely common. This is in fact the default setting for most of these groups, because we want full due process to go through the whole thing. Because you feel it happened doesn't mean it happened, you know, unless that person says it happened, that we both agreed to take our
Can you
case.
provide that for us, Toby?
Which part?
A few examples of the private sector?
Oh, absolutely. UPS is one of them.
I'd
I'm
like
very
to see
familiar with
that.
them. Yeah, I can absolutely do that. I'll make a note right now.
What about where state law requires a suspension for an employee?
It would depend on what we're talking about, because it doesn't require suspension without pay usually, right?
And I was gonna clarify that, you're referring to only without pay.
I am. I am. There's no
Because
damage.
this
even
talks about
on-
serving a suspension, not just unpaid
Yeah.
suspension.
We're talking, to be clear for the record, we're
Okay.
talking about without pay, because
Okay.
that's where the harm comes in, you know. If they're being suspended with pay, there is some harm, I guess, attached to their file, but they're not losing pay. That's the difference, so.
But even in like the case of a termination, you know, we do always, whenever we do or when we do a paid suspension while investigating or something like that,
Sure.
we always, you know, and that can, and if we're moving towards a termination, that can take a couple weeks. And we would always have someone on paid admin leave, but if we were to dismiss the employee, I mean, keeping someone on paid status for something that could take 6 weeks, and that's also unheard of, and it's unheard of in the teacher ranks too.
Yeah, it's in a lot of your public, like your, I think your firefighters, and I know your cops have a lot of that. I mean, it is other public groups, and I'll be honest with you, that one's more of a 50-50, just to be really honest with you. I see that in the private sector, but I also not see it in the private sector. It really depends on, you know, what we're doing there. That you're talking about the next one down, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
this one could also go in kind of in hand with some of the requests you made to extend timelines, because then they become less painful for our folks, right? So there's give and take there is all I'm gonna say on that one.
I'm just gonna glance at the grievance procedure to see if there's any, I think those two things show up on that one as well.
Probably.
I guess I just want to reiterate while we're kind of talking about grievances is, again, our, just general disagreement that that a complaint would be subject to the grievance procedure.
Well, now that we have a little bit of movement on some of the stuff, we can probably show you a package with some changes to that. I think there's a way to get us from anything's a grievance to these things are a grievance. I think we can get there.
That'd be great. And I want to reiterate that we want to make sure people have avenues for recourse. I don't want to come across that people don't have avenues for recourse at all. I mean, every person wants to know what are my options when something happens to me, whether I agree or disagree. It's just, you know, also being able to subject everything to grievance procedure, which then leaves all of our ability to, you know, we want to limit those things that leave our scope of being able to work through issues.
You know, I disagree a little with that. I think grievances, and actually, I'll quote a wise man back to himself, Mr. Dan Bush. I like grievances because they allow us to resolve gray areas in the contract, or to have a timeline to deal with them. So, and I think that's true. I mean, how many grievances have we taken? And we've had a few grievances here, but how many have we taken anywhere beyond you? None have gone to arbitration. None have gone to the board. I mean, I really see that process as where we roll up our sleeves and really work on this stuff. And so the more things we have, we can put through that process, the less likely we're going to be having people getting, I mean, dealing with a person in another district who says, I'm quitting, but you know what, before I leave, Oli, I'm going to go ERB with this stuff. Because there's no process in their contract either, so what do I say to them? You know, I mean, they're clearly doing it for vengeance. And they might be right in one of the two issues that they brought forward, but there's no way to handle that internally, so they're going to go that way. And I really believe, having been on the business end of the NLRB and some of those, you know, it's called DOSH up there, our version of Washington of Bully, they tend to make that square peg fit in that round hole, whether it does or it doesn't. And then we both end up with something that we really didn't ever think was what we were looking for. And I don't want that. I want us to try to take a really good, honest attempt at trying to resolve it here. And that's why I like the grievance procedure, because it does command our attention. We have to follow timelines, and we have to like try to move it along and figure out what we're gonna do. And so I think that process is, and I think it's actually worked here, really, to be honest with you. I think the grievance procedure has worked here. But I could understand why you may be leery of, being able to
Right.
breathe if the color of the sky is blue today. I could understand that, that might be a bit broad, but we could probably bring you back something now that we have the law figured out on just cause and a couple other things. So we may show it to you in a bundle though, just
Okay.
fair notice there.
All right, so so Article 19 that we passed over to you, so, we, on, I guess it would be F5, but it's probably gonna change to a different Roman numeral. So we agreed with this request for this, the request for this note shall be made prior to the return of the employee to work. So as long as we're in agreement that we are requesting it before they come back,
Yep.
then
That's the intent.
we're good with that.
Yep. Where's our sick leave cash out? Let's see that again.
Well, we did a quick costing of that and was about $250,000.
That's only at 20 days.
And that's, yeah,
And
so,
that's,
No.
and that's if they, oh, sorry, that was limited 20 days,
Yep.
20 days?
Yep.
Man, you got some people with some sick leave here, huh?
That was just 20 days.
No, that's what I'm saying, but, and that's after they hit the 40-day mark, right? Or how are you guys, what are you doing, what's the 20 days? Tell me what that, I think we might not be understanding each other again.
I believe your article said if they were over a certain limit, if
Yes.
they were over 20 or,
If they're over 20 days, 20 paid days in their sick bank, they could cash the remainder, right?
correct.
Okay.
So if they had not in their bank, in their leave plan, the sick leave bank wouldn't have anything to
No, no,
cash
their
out.
banks, their sick
I'm
leave
sorry,
bank,
okay,
yeah,
I
sorry.
just wanna make sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, if somebody had, we ran it on 20 days, yes,
Mhm.
which is 160 hours, yes,
So
most
you-
people have.
They have 20 days in their bank, and then the
Have
next
another,
20 would
yeah.
cost that. Okay. Okay.
If, we ran very rough if everybody had, because we have people that are in the thousands.
Mhm. Wow.
Oh, yes,
Sounds like we should be talking about something for those folks, don't you? I mean,
that's.
well, I think we have
yeah,
a
they've
different
been, they've
view.
obviously been here every
Right.
day.
They don't cost you subs.
Yeah. Well, the problem we're trying to reach here, just so you know, is that, it used to be, and we addressed it a little bit in here, the tier 1, tier 2 can still roll 50% into PERS, right? So there's a cost for the district there too, but it is at the end of their career, to be fair. But OPSERP, Vance has 600 hours, he retires, poof, for being here every day and doing his job. I mean, we're running into people trying to take all their sick leave every year, or we get close to retirement. I'm hearing those comments back to me. Well, just last few years I'm here, be sick a lot. I'm like, okay. So that's what we're trying to address, is that piece, both sides of that. And I do think there's a win-win here. And if it's not this, what would that be? Would there be some counter you guys could give? Maybe it would be something more tied to the actual retirement from here. That could be an option too. And that would limit a lot of this. It wouldn't limit all of it, but it would limit a lot. Because the other one is anybody, right? So if they leave and go to another district, if they were in retirement, they wouldn't be there. So I'm just trying to throw some ideas out, because
Well, when you
it's a
first
thing.
presented your bundle proposal last time to us, I was kind of, until we talked today, I was kind of wondering, how does sick leave fit into this? And now it makes sense, because there's a cash component to that particular piece. So I think that, one of the things that we talked about doing on July 10th is a total costing of total proposals. And so, again, as we talk about, where does that pie fit into this, is, where do we want those, what's the priority on where those funds go? So,
Yeah, but I think I want to be clear, I think there's a cost savings for the district here, which sounds counterintuitive, but if you have people coming to work for you, burning through all their sick leave every year, there's no incentive for them to not do that, okay? If there's, let's say it's 40 days, not 20 days, now you gotta be here 4 years or whatever to get to that point, there's that front-end savings for you as well. I mean, unless you guys are experiencing something different than every other district, you're having people show up and have being out of their sick leave. It seems like lightning speed for time, you know? And this could slow that down.
I see it all the time. Lots of people use up all their sick time every year.
Now, we could have
And where's
discussions
it
whether
cost you to have
that's.
us up?
Yeah, I
What's
think,
that cost?
we can have those discussions, you know, how honest that is, but the reality is if it's happening, and it's costing you money. So I don't know, when you're doing your costing, it'd be nice to see what those costs are. Because I think it's directly comparable to what we're talking about. It may not be apples to apples, but they're probably the same fruit group.
I mean, I think it's a unique, you know, and I really appreciate what you're seeing. You're on the front lines of it for sure. At the end of the day, it'll still come down to, you know, the COLAs, the insurance, the 10-month
course.
vacation
Of
you're
course.
asking. I mean, it's all gonna just come down to where
No, we understand there's a full package here, we understand that, but there is, COLAs or something that cost you, and they stack, and that's a different cost than, like you brought up 10-month, or less than 12-month vacation, right? Because the first year you get hit with that, and that amount, it doesn't double the next year, it goes up, let's say it's a 70-cent raise, it goes up 70 cents, right? COLA 5% here, and it's 5% next year, or using your example, it's 3%, you stack another 3%, now you're paying 6%, right? So, and it keeps built, so there is different incentives to do it different ways that can be more of a win-win to where you are still making their paycheck bigger, which is our goal here. It doesn't have to be so rigid that it's only in one way with just wages, you know? And this could be another component of that. This could be a component of part of a longevity thing too, for those people that are the mid-years in between the steps and the, you know. There's ways to make it work that aren't exactly what we're proposing, but, you know, would show something to those folks, especially the people that have been here. If they have thousands of hours or 1,000 hours, my God, I can't even imagine that. And I've got hundreds, you know. So I'm just saying that's somebody who's been here every day
And
for you.
I should have clarified, most of those are tier 1, tier 2.
Well,
I will
true, and they have something to do with
clarify,
that.
'cause I'm starting to
Yeah.
think about it, it's, because you're absolutely right, we would love to solve the
Officer.
attendance issue.
Yes, yeah, right.
There is a certain number, not all, but they see sick leave as paid time off, as PTO, that it's not used for, I'm gonna have to have knee surgery, it gets burnt every year. And so our concern with some of the payout stuff was then when something does come up, now other people are expected to cover your time off, even though you got cashed out for all your own sick leave. So
But to be
there's a
fair,
little
we
bit of
have
morality in
PLO,
that.
we have PLO now, right? That's 3 months.
Mhm.
If they
Okay.
have to maintain a month or two of sick pay, let's say it's 2 months, that's 5 months right there. If they have any vacation or person, I mean, we're getting close to 6 months, and if you look at most of your medical stuff, it ain't that long. It's people that, in the knee surgery, people, 2 or 3 months. That's the only reason why we're proposing this, is because we do see, we're paying for a PLO at this moment unless we agree to something different. We wanna get use out of that, you know, instead of our sick leave, but still also build a retirement that the state can't come in and purge when they feel they need to pay a football coach to retire with $1 million pension, you know? So we wanna like try to balance those things so these people can retire in dignity, right? But to be fair, your tier 1, tier 2 people cost you 50%, 500 hours you have to pay. So there's a cost built in there. So this is not reinventing the wheel. We can have those discussions and talk about people that retire from the district too. It doesn't have to be this discussion. The discussion dealing with that sick pay is what we wanna have. So. All right, sorry. Go
That's all
ahead.
right. So in addition to the part about the note,
Right.
and then on the sick leave bank, we did agree to your 250 hours.
And you guys did not wanna keep the board option at all?
No,
Okay, all right.
no, we do not want to keep that.
Yep,
And
sorry.
you had kind of added another letter, and it's already called out up above as far as they have to be exhausted.
Oh, I think we have it numbered differently is why. I think I broke up some of that bigger chunk.
I read
Paragraph.
what was in the introductory piece, and by my read of it, you still have word for word what we have. You just added an extra bullet, or an extra, I think, a C that basically calls out that people have to have exhausted their sick leave, even though it's listed in the opening paragraph.
Interesting, I thought I copied and pasted that from you, so apparently I got that wrong. But I mean, I think that goes without saying. you're saying that basically it's already above zero.
It's already above.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Well, we understand your changes there.
All right, so we're at 5 o'clock, and
We feel we can get back to you at another version of 21.
okay,
And we do want to look through 11. I do want to do the side-by-side comparison you suggested.
okay.
I guess we could, I don't know how much that's gonna change though, so I guess I'm curious, do you want us just to do it so that we're agreeing on everything else, then wait for you to talk about, do you want us to try to address the paid status versus the shifting of the time? Cause I think we're gonna have two, like an A and a B there, you know what I mean, like talking about two different pieces of that, is what it feels like from our, cause we're kind of discussing two things that are kind of related but not the same thing, you know, we're saying you can shift their day by a half hour one way or the other, delay or start early, you know, whatever. And you're saying, well, no, it's a paid status issue. I guess I'm trying to get some, what do you want to see on a counter there so we can see if we can get something to you?
A is talking about the number of hours that they work. That our stance has been that A is talking about their what we can adjust within
Right.
their hours that they're assigned.
Right.
B is talking about their schedule.
The 30 minutes. I think the problem is
And
that
again-
we have
and
different opinions on that. That's why I'm trying to figure out, do we add some language to address both concerns, or are we just going with the language we have? And I guess we'll have our different opinions, and it'll get settled if we ever get a grievance. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, really.
Well, I mean, you had made the comment in our earlier thing that if we reduce somebody's hours by 30 minutes, that that you could demand a bargain that, and we would disagree with that.
If you reduce their hours, if you shift them, if you shifted them a little,
But I think historically, this 3A has always been that we have their right to assign employees based on the three groups, that we could adjust their hours by 30 minutes within their group. That's been historically how that language has been interpreted. Now, one of the things is we haven't been in a, over the recent years, we've been needing to add more. So Kim gave you that statistic on how many more hours we've added to classified folks. So we haven't been in those, pinching moments where we're reducing people by 30 minutes for any particular reason. We've been in an ad mode for a long time. But regardless of that, our position has been that this language has been there to allow us to adjust people's work hours within those groups.
Okay, and I understand that, and I told you, when I read the language, it seemed like you could adjust 30 minutes total per week, but talking to my folks, they're telling me, no, it's per day, but it's shifting them. I'm just saying, I understand what your position is, I disagree that it's the practice, because my folks are telling me something different. So do we want to tackle that to try to get everybody on the same page, and do we want to try to get language that would, I guess, address that clearer? Is that if we can do that with our side, is that helpful? Or do you want to maintain your position and have the current language? That's what I'm trying to work out, so we can try to get you a thoughtful proposal,
Well, like I said previously, I think that this is the space to work all this stuff out, because otherwise we're going to be in a.
I agree. Okay, so we'll try to work on something to address that. Okay. That's all I'm trying to figure out, because obviously I don't know if we have much different opinions.
I just want to make sure that the difference between 3A and 3B is 3A is talking about what their work assignment hours are.
Right.
And 3B is talking about their work schedule and shifting
Right.
their schedule. So not changing the number of hours, but shifting their start and end times. Did I get that right, team? Sarah?
Yes, A is about how many total hours per week you're assigned, which relates to your insurance benefit.
Right.
We are not going to be moving somebody from one benefit level to another without the discussion. And then B is start time versus end time adjustments.
And that minor adjustments of 30 minutes are not are considered minor, and major will be discussed with the union. So anything more than 30 minutes is going to, going to be discussed first,
Okay.
which clearly hasn't been happening very often.
No, and this is the danger with this is that, we both have our staked out positions and we're not changing the language, so we can make those arguments at any time. But if we come back and we try to work on this with you, like that could damage that if we don't get that. And so that's why I'm asking these questions, because I really would like to try to find where we can
Right.
have those meaningful discussions that actually gets us to what both sides are trying to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
So I would
we'll take a
I
stab
would
at that.
rather, team, do we agree we want to get this resolved now at this table versus in a situation? Okay. So yes, we would like to resolve that now.
All right, we'll take another stab at 11-2, and hopefully, we're gonna get you back 21 for sure, but hopefully we'll get you 11-2.
Okay.
We're gonna try. It's gonna be a lot of internal discussion on that one, though.
Got it.
All right. All right, hopefully third time's the charm here. So that we better understood, you're talking about your language. If you flip it over, you'll see in the green there, we adopted your language there. And then we added the piece that we think we were talking about here, additional classes of personnel, or for personal growth. It should say for, not or. Please make that, the note should be for, not or. For personal growth may be taken with approval. So that's like wellness classes, organizing classes, that I think we got it there. We're still keeping it with $750 for all. We also changed the part that Kim pointed out on C there. So now it doesn't say professional, it says all requests. So we're talking about for the whole group, rather than have it limited to professional development, although it looks like the professional development should have been struck through, but it's not there, but that's what was there before. So we're hoping that's closer.
We did have one question that came up, and I do apologize that, I think somebody pointed this out when we were looking at it. The final sentence in C, 5C, any unencumbered funds from the pool will be reallocated, so this is a growing pool, meaning the unused get added to the next year's, is what you're proposing, is that?
I think that's the
I
old,
think that's old language,
like
maybe?
old language, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, as I understood it, how you got, if you had, let's say you have 20,000 in, like we're requesting, we use 10 this year, you'll just put another, you'll roll it forward to the next year, put another 10 in, so it's not you're not truly
Okay.
putting 20 in every year.
So-
It's just the amount in the pool will be 20 at the beginning of each year.
so we could cut this sentence possibly, because what it's saying is any unencumbered, meaning any funds not used will be rolled into the pool. The pool is 20,000 per fiscal year already. So I just wasn't sure which one you're proposing.
I think I think we didn't address that language. I think if we did that in the old language because it was different amounts. I think that's what happened. So if we had 20,000, we would just strike that language. I would agree that would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
just to clarify.
No,
Thanks.
that's a good
Appreciate it.
clarification.
All right.
All right, you ready to sign? I got a pen for you.
I think we'll need to talk still, but
Sure.
I think
I think
we're getting closer.
I think we got a direction for 11. I think we finally figured that the direction. We just didn't have time to get it done before.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to? Well, we have a work session next week,
Thursday. Yep.
and
I'm bargaining the 10th, right? The following week.
yes,
Okay. I think we have the next few meetings set already. So.
yeah. So how do we want to develop an agenda for the 6th? Do we want to just?
I think going back and forth in email has been pretty good for us because it's been allowed us to do it in real time. I mean, obviously I think it's our turn on financials, so it would make sense that we would bring that back. But I want to do a deep dive and take a look at a few things because there's a couple that now that we know some of the fates, some of these laws, that I need to tweak the proposals or change them a bit or whatnot. And I'm sure we'll have more of that after the work session too. So it would make sense for us to maybe try to plan and have everything developed by Friday for agenda. if that makes sense to you.
For this Friday, get an agenda this Friday.
Well, no, it'd be after our work session.
Oh, after the work, so,
Because then we'll know everything we're gonna be talking about, right?
okay,
Yeah. And we can maybe even do that on Thursday when we're in the work session, you know, because we'll know what we're talking through at that point, and we might be able to develop that there, but no later than Friday.
yeah.
Okay.
I think what I was asking about was during that work session time of being able to, like last time you wanted to talk about the recognition clause, and we wanted to present what ended up coming out today with the IA proposals and have, you know, a conversation there. How do we want to develop what we want to talk about at that meeting?
Oh, at the work session?
Yeah,
Well, I still think we need to talk through, I think now that we know some of the fates of these lots, there's a few of them that become a little simpler, but I do think there's still some sticking points, like on temporary employees, for instance, and obviously we're miles apart on the probationary, pre-probationary period, so I think it'd be good to have some discussions along
Okay.
those lines, and substitute language. I think those three things, like I've looped before together, I think makes sense to discuss those for us.
okay.
You know, I have to think about it for a minute. I know because we've kind of been going back and forth on a bunch of stuff, so I think we
How
could
about I
probably
send
have
it,
some
well,
discussions.
how about I send you kind of the areas that I know that I will want
Yeah.
to talk about, and you
Yeah.
can do likewise.
Yeah, that way I can talk to my team and get a little better idea. I know some of this, I know that first group, but the rest of the stuff I want to have a better discussion with them about first, so.
What do you have offhand that you want to talk about?
Well, I would still like to talk about the recognition clause, and, continue grievance procedure would be one. I think
Work hours, work week.
I mean, if we wanted to spend some time on that, that would probably be worthwhile. One just popped in my head and left.
Although I think work weeks, I think we have a direction on that, but we can still talk about it, but I think we finally figured out, now that we've had enough discussion here, I think we figured out.
So
what we're
reclassification, the one strikeout that you have, we could
Sure.
talk about, and I'm blanking on.
Well, like you said, I don't think you need to have it here. You can send us an email what you want to talk. I mean, you might want to talk to your team and find something else you want to talk about too. So I know I do.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but we can commit to getting that to you before the end of the week.
Okay.
Right.
And then last time was it just the two of you? And
I think it was Lisa,
And-
Vance, and me.
And I don't, last time it was Brandon,
I was there.
Marissa,
Oh,
and me. Were you there?
I was
Work
there.
session.
Yeah.
Paul.
Yeah.
Myself.
Paul was there too. Yeah.
Okay.
Paul, myself, and Bobby.
That's right. So, well, I guess any, I'm not sure if our whole team will be there or not. But
Well,
Okay.
the goal is usually to have a few less people
Yes,
so that
I
we can
agree.
try to get through
Yeah.
things, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll let you know that as well. Who's attending.
Okay.
By the end of the week.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. Thanks. Have a good evening.
Yep.